Imagine you earn 30,000 Rand a month. And it's a high number, but just for illustrative purposes, 30,000 Rand a month in the perfect world is 1,000 Rand a day. So on the 10th day of the month, if the person has worked 10 days, theoretically, he or she has earned 10,000 Rand. So why can't they get access to some of it? The company actually already owes it to that employee. Processing 1 million transactions a month. We've got over 500,000 employees on the platform, and we've probably integrated now close on 300, if not more, corporates onto the PayMeNow platform, and that's now across multiple South African territories as well as Pakistan.
Welcome to IT News Africa's interview with Dion Nobrega. He's the CEO and co-founder of PayMeNow. And my name is Avi Wakama from IT News Africa. And the topic for this discussion is promoting financial literacy in a digital age. So just a bit about PayMeNow. PayMeNow is a platform launched in 2020 in South Africa. It has grown significantly across the African continent, processing over 500,000 transactions monthly. That's fantastic. With over 100 corporations and 290,000 users in South Africa, PayMeNow has experienced remarkable growth. PayMeNow offers a data-free app ensuring accessibility for users in underserved areas, allowing users with no data to buy and top up from their chosen provider at no extra cost. In addition, its bank-grade security protocols and direct payroll integration have positioned it as a trusted partner for employers and employees alike. So, Dion, how did PayMeNow start? Tell us a bit about your background and how did this idea come about?
Yeah, thanks, Abby. And thanks for the opportunity to tell the story. I think just in terms of that introduction, I think some of the stats that you have there might be about 6 months to a year old. So we're now processing 1 million transactions a month. We've got over 500,000 employees on the platform, and we've probably integrated now close on 300, if not more, corporates onto the PayMeNow platform, and that's now across multiple South African territories, as well as Pakistan, which is one of our more recent rollouts, which is also quite an interesting dynamic, stepped out of the African continent, very interesting socio-political environment, a massive economy as well. But yes, just to give you a little bit of a backstory, myself and my co-founders came across the idea of earned wage access in 2019. Now, we all come from Fintech, banking, computer science backgrounds. We worked in the financial services space for a very long time. My other very famous co-founder studied computer science, but he went and played rugby for South Africa. So that's none other than Brian Abana. And the four of us in 2019 saw this concept, as I mentioned, earned wage access. We didn't invent it. It actually started in the United States in about 2013, 2014. We saw it in the UK in 2019. We had sort of just launched for about a year. There were 1 or 2 players, and understanding the offering and what it truly can bring, which is financial inclusion, responsible access to wages, an alternative to credits, which you mentioned many, and some of the articles, that we've published in the last while. Many South Africans and Africans, for that matter, have a requirement for cash throughout the month, and it's that inaccessibility to cash that leads them to payday lenders or loan sharks, because many are underbanked or underserved. So bringing a solution like earned wage access to a market like South Africa, we were very excited about it. We started in 2019, as you rightfully mentioned, and we're super proud of the fact that it was just announced about a month ago. We won an award for the fastest growing company in South Africa and the 6th fastest in Africa. So that's testament to obviously a market that needs a service like ours, but also in a sustainable manner. And we're super proud of the fact that we've built something that is 10x. With anything fintech, you always need to be disruptive. You got to be 10 times better or cheaper or faster. And for us, from day one, it was always a case of we want to be at least 10 times cheaper than anything else out there, but more importantly, how do we do it responsibly? And I think within your initial mention of the topic for conversation around financial literacy, that was one of the key drivers for us is if we are going to empower people potentially that previously did not have access to services like this, how do we ensure that it is utilized responsibly, even though it's cheap? How do we make sure it's responsible? And for us, a cornerstone or a golden thread throughout our entire offering is financial literacy. And I'd love to tell you a little bit more about it as we go through this interview.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dion. We'll be sure to update those stats, and you guys are shooting out the lights there, obviously. And I'd like to find out, how does PayMeNow actually work from an employer's point of view and from an employee's point of view? How does it work? How's the process?
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. So at the core of PayMeNow is the model called earned wage access. Now, as the name implies, earned wage access gives people access to money that they've already earned throughout the month. So historically, and which is very prevalent in South Africa, majority of people get paid monthly. And unfortunately, expenses don't always wait for month end, or expenses don't just happen monthly, and especially not emergencies. So there's disconnect between needing access to money, cash in hand on a day-to-day basis for transport, for electricity, for data, for food, and getting paid monthly is a massive disconnect. And a solution like PayMeNow, which offers earned wage access as one of our core offerings, I'll use an easy example, Abby. Imagine you earn 30,000 Rand a month, and it's a high number, but just for illustrative purposes, 30,000 Rand a month in the perfect world is 1,000 Rand a day. So on the 10th day of the month, if the person has worked 10 days, theoretically, he or she has earned 10,000 Rand. So why can't they get access to some of it? The company actually already owes it to that employee. So with a solution like PayMeNow or earned wage access in general, PayMeNow would integrate into the employer's payroll system, and there's various ways of doing it. And then on a daily basis, however much that employee has then worked for, they can unlock access to some of that money. So it's not getting access to the entire month's salary on the first of the month. On the 10th, it'll be access to a percentage of that 10,000 or a percentage of 15,000 on the 15th of the month. And whatever the employee uses will come off their salary that same month. So if it wasn't for technology, if it wasn't for digital platforms, if it wasn't for payrolls being far more API and data sharing friendly, this solution probably couldn't exist. So it is a case of using technology that's available and seeing how we can optimize a process that, as I mentioned, has been monthly for various reasons. You know, corporates, they get paid monthly, their cash flow management. And if you suddenly had to ask a payroll person, let your staff choose who wants to be paid daily, who wants to be paid monthly, who wants to be paid weekly, they'll probably end up looking like me with no hair because it would have all been pulled out in frustration. So really the core mechanics, we're giving people access to a portion of money that they've already earned throughout the month. If they decide to use it, whatever they use will come off the salary that same month. So it's not eating tomorrow's lunch today. And if they don't use the service, which, by the way, we only get about 50 to 60% of an employer's staff actually utilizing the service. So they don't have to, but if they don't, they'll get their salary as per normal at the end of the month. So really that's the cornerstone, or should I say the core process or principle of earned wage access. PayMeNow just took it a whole step further and said, well, earned wage access is our core functionality, but how do we truly build a product that's financial wellness, financial inclusion? And that is the various steps of our product that I'd obviously love to tell you a little bit more about.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it takes away the need for cumbersome processes for salary advances and loans to employees and stuff like that. So I think that's a great service. But you've seen massive growth in South Africa and in Africa. And what do you think is responsible for that growth?
Yeah. So Abby, I think again, it's there is a problem that we're trying to solve. So as I mentioned, many people are paid monthly, but expenses happen daily. You know, the average person in South Africa tops up their data every 3 to 4 days. It's not a monthly cell phone contract. They top up electricity once a week. Groceries are buy as and when it's needed. So there's a massive disconnect. So that's step one. That's just purely based on how people unfortunately are paid. Is it a bad thing that people get paid monthly? I don't think it is. I still think it's great that 70-80% of a person's salary should get paid in a lump sum for them to manage, big ticket items like paying off a house or, paying off other, assets, and budgeting better. But it's really about a 20-25% of incidentals throughout the month that we believe give people access to that because they are currently spending it and they don't have access to cash. So they go and borrow, and only 1 out of 8 South Africans, and I think the picture is even worse when you go, north of the border, qualify for formal credit. I'm not saying credit is, again, a good thing to use for, incidentals or utilities or day to day, but it's that exclusion factor. So when people don't have access to quality financial services, where do they go? And unfortunately, that's quite an ugly picture. So step one, we're solving a problem. We're super responsible in one, it's super cheap. So the employers like that. So when we pitch it to a large company, of course, I can explain the disconnect and why employees need the service. But the employer is the gatekeeper, which we also think is a good thing because earned wage access companies are very, very much scrutinized by the employer. So we could never put something in front of the employee if the employer is not happy with it. And I like that about it. It means the industry is not necessarily regulated by the employer, but highly scrutinized, ensuring the best value for their employees. So that I think is a very good plus. Secondly, in terms of the uptake is how do you make a service like this accessible? And Abe, you mentioned this. When an employee currently needs access to money, they might have to fill out an application form. They might have to go to a bank. This could take hours, if not days. And therein lies you missing an opportunity as a financial services provider. And also the individual who now needs that money might do something silly and borrow money from a loan shark because it's convenient. So having the service accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, digitized across an app, a native app, a web app, USSD, even WhatsApp. Our app is data free. We're really trying to remove all the barriers to entry that might make someone make a bad decision. So giving them access to the service, it's super cheap, it's super accessible. And again, I'd like to get into the financial literacy component of our product that we believe truly makes it responsible. So I think it's those combination of those factors that has seen a massive rise in demand for the offering. And one of our more interesting stats, AB, is that 50% of all our transactions, and as I mentioned, we're processing about 1 million transactions across the African continent at the moment, every single month. Half of those are at zero fees. So we're super proud of the fact that people can log into our app on the 15th of the month. If they need money to buy electricity, we'll give them the electricity voucher. Let's say it's 50 Rand, and only 50 Rand will come off their salary at the end of the month. Now, there's nothing else like that available in South Africa. And I think for us, knowing that at least half of all our transactions are at zero fees, but also used for necessity products, that really gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling that it's not being abused.
Fantastic. I think even just looking at it from an employee loyalty point of view, if an employee works for a company where they can access a portion of their salary when they need it for emergencies or whatever, it actually gives them a reason to stay with such a company, as opposed to having to wait or go to loan sharks, like you said, and so on. So from an employer's point of view, it's a fantastic offering. But I'd like to know who pays for this service. Does the employee pay PayMeNow, or does the employer pay?
Yeah, that's
Because
a very good.
someone's got to pay for the service. Yeah.
Yeah. So you touched on a few things that was interesting. You mentioned that having a service like this could bring loyalty from your employee base because suddenly they feel like you're actually giving them this additional employee benefit. It's a very it's a financial inclusive offering. Yes, you can't give everyone the flexibility of getting paid as and when they want. As I mentioned, that would drive payroll insane, but giving them this option is very, very powerful. We actually saw this a few years ago. They called it the Great Resignation, where people were resigning to be able to cash in their pension funds because they were so indebted and they had, financial difficulty. People were resigning to cash in their pension funds to go find new employment. They were that desperate. And that actually gave rise to the two-pot system. I mean, that was one of the reasons two-pot was quoted as being made available, is to stop people from resigning and cashing out their pension funds and then, actually not have savings for retirement. So we do think that an offering like PayMeNow can resolve some of those difficulties. I really think so. So it really is giving people access to that service that they wouldn't normally have. But on your point around who pays for it, PayMeNow makes it flexible to the employer to decide. So as I mentioned earlier to you, 50% of all our transactions are at no fees. So there literally no one pays for it. The employee doesn't pay, nor the employer. And that's really revolutionary. So, and the dynamic is that we represent 500,000 people on the platform. So if we want to start offering grocery vouchers on PayMeNow to our customer base, we go to the biggest providers of groceries and we say, well, we represent 500,000 people. Can you give us a small discount? So we go to the large retailers, we buy bulk vouchers, and we're able to disperse it at no fees. And we still make a small discount, enough for us to make a commercial model work. But the best part of it, no fees to the underlying consumer. So that's just around how our necessity products work on the platform. The other half of transactions on PayMeNow is for cash. So AB logs in the middle of the month. He needs 500 Rand, but it's for transport. And we know in South Africa, transport is quite often public transport. You need cash in hand. It's not digitized. So we do understand that people do also need access to cash. And unfortunately, cash comes at a cost to transfer, to fund, and therein lies a small fee component, and then typically the employee pays it. So for example, the employee logs onto PayMeNow, they want 1,000 Rand today. We will put 1,000 Rand into their bank account, and 1,020 Rand, for example, as an example, will come off their salary. So it's typically comparable to an ATM withdrawal fee. So when it's cash, there's a small fee, typically the employee pays, but if it's a necessity product on our app, no fees.
Thanks. You mentioned financial literacy, and I think that's a very important topic because people need to budget, people need to manage their finances in such a way that they're able to live within or below their means in order to keep their heads above water. With access to cash at any time of the month, people could run into trouble. So does PayMeNow have a financial literacy component to help people stay responsible in terms of how they manage their finances?
Yeah, it'd be great question. I'm glad you asked it. So at the core of PayMeNow, it's earned wage access. And one thing I didn't explain is that most employers will set a limit of how much an employee can get access to through PayMeNow. And that limit is normally 25% of an employee's net pay. So in that example of 30,000 Rand a month, on the 10th of the month, the employees earn 10,000 Rand, but typically through PayMeNow, they'll get access to 2,500 Rand of that 10,000, if that makes sense. So just firstly, as a concept, the employer always sets the maximum limit. Now, what we do with PayMeNow, and we actually borrowed this from a very famous medical insurance company in South Africa, where they rolled out this health incentive, where if you get to the gold or the platinum status, you get all the greatest rewards and offerings. And how you get to that is you eat healthy, you exercise, you log all these things, and you get rewarded. So on PayMeNow, how we use something very similar. If the employer says you can get access to 25%, PayMeNow says to the employee, before you start, we're going to start you on the green tier. And on green, you only get access to half of that 25%. And what you need to do is you need to do a free credit score every 45 days. You need to do a budgeting tool. You need to do financial literacy modules that we promote to the customers. Every single month, there's a new module. I mentioned two-pot earlier. So last year, just before two-pot came out, there was a module on two-pots. Employees can read through it. Of course, it's data free. And at the end of each module, there's some kind of action that the person needs to do. It's either create a budget, it's Q&A, it's do a financial health check. So as the employees do these modules, they earn points, and the points let them go from green to bronze to silver to gold, and they need to maintain these statuses to unlock at most that 25% of their earnings. So the interesting stat, The average person in South Africa gets access to about 2,200 Rand on PayMeNow a month, just to give you an idea. But the average person only uses about 1,300 Rand. And for us, that was another very, very interesting statistic, is that even though we put the cookie jar in front of the employee's nose a little bit early, they don't eat all the cookies because one, we've gamified this financial education. They understand their financial position so much better. They don't get access to all the cookies from day one. And also, they know that if they use it, it will come off their salary at the end of the month. And I think, historically in South Africa, there's this, this bad behavior where people would borrow from one and duck and dive and borrow from another and close their bank accounts and let debit orders bounce or change mobile numbers because there was just, a slight lack of accountability. And be it as it may, there might be many factors that have, led to that. The powerful thing around earned wage access is people use it responsibly because they know it's their hard-earned money. Often think that people believe a loan is not your money and you're just paying it back. But all a loan is you're taking your future money and you're paying it back, at a premium. With earned wage access, people cannot, avoid having to make up those commitments. And I think that changes the way in which people use the service. So financial literacy absolutely baked into our product. If you don't get to gold or if your financial health check doesn't check out, we can slightly reduce the person's accessibility to the service. And that really ties into stopping people abusing the service. You asked me what stops people from utilizing the app every single month or drawing down all the cash. It's all these various guardrails that we've built in. It's the gamified education. It's limiting the access if their financial health check isn't good. Giving access to necessity products at no fees, and that promotes responsible behavior.
Thanks for that. And I'd just like to know, have you noticed any differences in terms of usage or usage patterns between South Africa and other African countries, perhaps in Kenya, Ghana, or Nigeria, and maybe even in Asia, in Pakistan, like you said? Have you seen any differences in how the service is used?
Yeah, look, I think one common thread is that, all these markets that we mentioned, people are financially excluded or underserved. It's the access to financial services is limited. So, and also in most of those countries, people are paid monthly. If you look at the US and the UK, a lot of people are paid fortnightly and weekly. So the people in the markets that we serve earn a lot less than those developed markets. Plus, they only get paid monthly and they need cash in hand for a day-to-day, transport, groceries, data, airtime. The one big nuance, of course, between South Africa and some of the sort of more Eastern African countries that you mentioned, we are in Zambia and Uganda, is a big use of mobile money or e-wallets or Momo, as some of the brands are known as. And there we've seen a far bigger usage in that space as what we see in South Africa to cash. So in South Africa, 50% of our transactions are for cash, and the rest is for what we call the value-added services at no fees. But in those other East African countries, as I mentioned, almost 75% of transactions are happening within mobile wallets. And that is just, again, a reflection of the market there. Mobile wallets have been highly adopted. Everyone's spoken about M-Pesa for how long, and equivalents. So if we can tap into what local markets utilize, make sure that it's fit for the market and do it cheaper, again, than cash or cheaper than anything else in the market, you've got an incredible product still with this whole responsible angle of gamified financial literacy. So very much a case of, and on the vouchering side, for example, that is not something that exists in some of these other countries. So again, we took what works in South Africa, we went and negotiated massive discounts at some of the providers of services, and that brings a brilliant product to South Africa. Uganda, Zambia, mobile money is, the next big thing. Pakistan is a really, really interesting market. Firstly, our product had to be Sharia compliance, which again is an interesting thing. Earned wage access is considered Sharia compliance, the way in which we implemented. So that was another learnings that we had to go through before we were able to deploy the service there to Pakistan. But a very interesting market. They've got almost 250 million people. And you can just imagine the need for a similar service like this.
Okay, and in closing, tell me about your future plans. How do you intend to take over the world? Um, and do you have any new products coming up in the pipeline that viewers should look out for?
Yeah, so one product that's it's not new, it's been on our platform for already about a year and a half to 2 years, is a in-app savings product. Now, for us, that's a massive step towards financial liberation for people, is to have access to savings. And I think one of the biggest problems in many markets is, sure, it is tough to save. It's tough to have even 50 Rand to put away a month. But if you can make it as simple as the click of a button, you've already at least removed barriers to entry or hurdles to get people to save and to do it into a quality financial instrument. So that's an incredible product that we've rolled out. We have a 70% uptake on that product, which for us is massive. It's Africans historically don't have a great savings culture. So I think driving savings is the next thing that we need in this whole journey to financial wellness for our customer base. We are on a drive to expand to various jurisdictions. So that's a very big thing for us horizontally around how we want to roll out PayMeNow. But also as we go vertically, like I mentioned, to add more products that are truly serving a need, and products where, and I think again, the nice thing about this, AB, is when we go to an employer, you have to have the best in market available. Otherwise, they'll say no. And that's a very big gatekeeper. So we understand the dynamics of what the customer base needs. Many of them are excluded. We can use our weight behind us. Like I said, 500,000 people currently on the platform in SA alone, by the way. We're hoping to be over 1 million in the next 2 years in SA alone, is to use that to go to traditional financial service providers and package it in a way that can be made accessible to those that don't normally get access. So it is truly just breaking down these financial exclusion barriers on products and getting something that's fit for market at the best possible price point to people who would not normally get access to it. And that's what we're working on at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Dion. Thank you for telling us about PayMeNow, and thanks for giving us your time for this interview.